In this bad boy, huh? All right. Okay, so here's what we got going on. I just have a very, very simple scene. This is the new scene. This is something that you'll be getting very intimate with in 426, as it's going to give us an opportunity to explore a number of different things. How many people are going on to 426 in the fall? A lot. Great. Awesome. Awesome. So this is going to be, this is foreshadowing, if you will, what's going to happen in 426. Because the latter half of 426 is going to be a majority of what we're going to be talking about today. A little bit of scripting, a lot of interactivity, making elements that now start to have a relationship with each other. This is one of the demo scenes that I'm going to be giving you guys in 426, and it's a very, very, very just simple little maze. That's all. It's nothing too fantastic. This isn't even the actual full version. This is the dumbed down intro version. It's just a stupid maze. It's nothing too fancy. It's not even really a maze. It's more just you follow the hallway, some things fall on you in the actual game itself. There's a pit of doom that opens up, I think, somewhere over here. And then eventually you'll get back over into that great room. So that's the game. Nothing too fancy, okay? Ta-da! Just a big loop. All right. However, what I want to create is a interface. I want to create a splash screen that gives the gamer the opportunity to execute the actual level itself and launch the game, or to exit out. What we see inside of the Unity player is exactly what the gamer is going to get. So we need to add some additional elements in here so that we're not just, boom, thrown into the game. Okay? We need a start menu. So that's the goal, just to create a start menu. It's really easy to do this. Believe it or not, it's going to be an actual separate scene file. In most games, and if you look at a lot of the most recent games, they load you into a separate scene. A whole bunch of buttons on the screen, then you hit one of those buttons and you're automatically jumped into the actual first level of the game. So we're going to create a brand new scene that's completely disconnected from what we've crafted here and use that as the starting point of our game. Now this scene, you can basically put anything you want in this scene. I want to create a new scene, okay? Let's just save it. We'll just call this level or start menu. There we go. Start menu, and it's empty. However, we can put whatever we want in here. We can put 3D elements, we can put animations, we can put videos. It's just a raw scene like any other scene that we've been working with so far inside of Unity. Shoot, it could even be a duplicate of your terrain if you wanted to, but it needs to be a separate scene file, okay? So a separate level, if you will, inside of Unity. Now, there's a couple things in here that we need to establish before we get into the actual scripting component of our little menu. So let's kind of prototype and figure out precisely what we want to have on screen. I think initially, what may be a good idea is to have two buttons. One that says play, one that says quit. Kind of normal, pretty easy, not too bad, right? Let's go in and see what we can do in order to create these little elements. I'm going to be introducing you guys to a really cool game component here called Gooey Textures, a game object called a Gooey Texture. A Gooey Texture, okay? Gooey stands for what? What's Gooey stand for? Graphical User Interface. So the Gooey text and the Gooey Texture are entirely designed for interface elements. Pop quiz, does anyone know who invented or who kind of mainstreamed the Gooey? Anyone? Anyone? Little known computer factoid? Apple. Apple came up with the Gooey, which is kind of crazy. So we're going to be making some Gooey textures. Now these are going to be bitmaps. These are going to be rasterized images, a lot like the textures that we've been working with up until now, okay? So I'm going to go over to Photoshop and physically create some buttons, okay? Physically create some buttons. These are going to be rasterized, defined images, and for our first time out, we're going to keep it pretty basic and pretty simple. Let me just open up Photoshop here, and we'll get rocking and a rolling. Okay, I think I want to keep the size of my buttons pretty uniform. I'll make it I'll make it 256 or 300 by 100. I think that's a good number to start with. We don't necessarily have to retain our standard image sizes. Let's just do custom, and I'll do. Oh, we don't want inches. I want pixels. So we'll do 300 by 100. RGB. I want a transparent background, rock and roll. Okay. All right, awesome. So there is my starting point for my little button. Okay, so let's go ahead and add a couple elements in here. Of course, we're gonna need some text. Maybe we'll put like a little rounded oval in the background, make it look kind of fancy. And ideally, once we design the button, we're probably gonna have to think of some ways to create a whole series of states. Because it'd be great if we like moused over the button and the button changed ever so slightly, to let the player know that he or she has in fact moused over that area. So we're gonna need some states. We're probably gonna need a click state, a normal state, and a hover state, right? When it's just normal, it's just that's what you're gonna see on screen. When you hover over the mouse, it's gonna change color. Then when you click on it, it's gonna change color again to confirm that you have in fact hit that button. All right, let's go ahead and design it real fast. Let's just use some basic shapes. These are a little rounded rectangle action here. That'll do. Just keep it nice and red. Give it a nice, oh, I don't know, what do you want? Let's do an outline. I'll stroke it here. And let's do inside. And shoot, when we do a little inner glow action as well, we'll make the color dark. There we go. Cool. Maybe even on the color, we don't even, for the outline, we don't have to make it black. Maybe we make it white. That might be kind of nice. Give us some contrast. And of course, we're going to need some text in here too. So this is the foundation for my little button. Looking pretty good. Let's get some text going. And this is going to be play. It's massive, so let's make it a little bit smaller. It's also the same color as the background, so let's make it an alternating color so we can see the darn thing. Now, why can't I see my text layer? There we go. Cool. Looks like I accidentally made a duplicate. That's all right. There it is. So there's my button. Ta-da! Super fancy. I know, it's amazing. It's the best work I've ever done on screen right here. Okay, so this is going to be my normal state. So let's just do this. I have two layers here that are really responsible for generating the normal state. Let's throw them into a folder because remember, we need 3 different versions of this exact same button. We need a hover, a normal, and a click. Let's throw these into their own separate folders. We can name this now. This is normal. I'll copy the contents, or I'll copy that entire folder. This will be hover. And one more time, this will be, oops. This will be click. Okay, so how do we want the hover button to be different from that of the play? Suggestions, what should we do? When we hover over the button, what should change? Make it a little bit bigger? We can do that, sure. Sounds good to me. Let's just grab my text element here. You know what I'll do, just to make it a little bit easier, I'll just do a free transform and just scale this up ever so slightly. That works. I love it. And you know what I'm also going to do? I think I'm going to change the color of it, just so it's visually very apparent. Let's just make it, I don't know what. We'll make it yellow. There we go. Awesome. So it's big and yellow when we hover over it. That works. I love it. And the click version of this, maybe we just change the color. You know what we should do? We should keep the same size. Here's hover. And I'll change the color one more time. That's not how you spell click. There we go. And how about we change the color back to white. There we go. So if we click it, it'll turn white. Makes sense. All right. So there's our 3 versions of our button. So we have the normal state, we have the hover state, and then we have the click state. Pretty cool. So Over in Unity, we're going to need all three of these files. So we're going to save them out, I think, as PNGs. Now, I like PNGs in this particular situation because PNGs embed a transparency channel into the actual file itself. So we'll be able to overlay all of these images on top of the background of our three-dimensional scene. Rock and roll. That's exactly what we want. So let's just do it real fast. Let's save out each one of these. Here's the, here we go. I'm just going to save these to my desktop, I think. Save as. Save them as a PNG. So this is play, button, or here we'll do this. We'll do button play. Button play. This is normal. Love it. Okay, great. Save out this one. This is going to be our hover. PNG, and this is going to be button play, click. Yeah, I'm thinking I did that. No, they're all PNGs, but yeah, I didn't get the popover to tell me. There we go. That'll work. All right. So let's go back over into Unity and import all these assets into the game and get everything starting to work. So we're just going to import the assets, go find all my buttons. Here's click. Here's hover. And here's normal. All right, rock and roll. Things are good. Great. All right, a couple things that we need to, oops, excuse me. So here's the next bit. The next bit's pretty easy, but however, I want to just make one suggestion for you guys. Notice that down there in my project tab, I have my my normal button selected. If your button is selected before you create the GUI texture, this element will automatically be loaded into that GUI texture. So it kind of saves you a step. Also helps you kind of visually understand precisely which elements on screen that you're trying to craft. So let's do it. Got my play button or my normal play button selected, game object, create other, GUI texture. All right, and there it is. It looks a little funky, however, okay, but it relatively is working. It's getting a little squished, and let me show you what's going on. When I created the GUI texture, it adopted the name of the image that I had selected when I created the GUI texture. Good naming conventions, right? Now we can very easily see just by the name of the object in the hierarchy, this is the button, it's the play button, and this is the normal state of that play button. Good naming conventions. Great job, Pat. Awesome. Well done. Okay. However, if we go look at the components that are associated with this game object, naturally we get a transform. And here's the GUI texture component. And this is where the lion's share of the editing that we need to perform is going to happen. You can see here in the texture that there's a whole series of channels that we get to adjust. Most specifically, and probably most importantly, we have a channel here called texture. And if you look to the right, it's nothing more than an image well. And we can drag whatever image we want into that image well and load that as the texture for this button. Okay? In addition, we can also work with the pixel inset. And this is really the area that we need to adjust. Because as you can see, the height and the width are the defaults, which is 256 by 128. We need to change this because the original document that I created over in Unity or over in Photoshop was 300 by 100. Okay? Let's just change this real fast. There we go. And now my button on screen looks the way it did over in Photoshop. So we can continue to distort all these in app. Okay, and the pixel inset for X and Y, this is kind of a fun one. This allows us to move our objects around in the screen. You're more than welcome to do this. However, from time to time, it does get a little frustrating. You can change the transform of these elements as well. So you can physically move them up and down and left and right, and even along the Z-axis. Well, not so much the Z-axis, as you adjust the location of your on-screen elements, which is kind of cool. Now, the border stuff, this is something that's really kind of super cool, and we're going to interface with this a lot when we get into 426. because this is going to allow us to kind of tile this texture across a number of different axes. Check it out. Now, I know with this button, you're like, wow, that's not even really kind of cool, Pat, because it's distorting it, and you're absolutely right. However, if you take this idea and run with it, this is precisely how we do like health bars, because a health bar is nothing more than a little green cube, very tiny, and it's tiled a bazillion times. And then whenever you lose your health, they change that border size. Boop, just pops down, pops down, pops down, pops down. And then at the end of the game, or when you die, they just reset those values, okay? So there's a much larger architecture at play when dealing with those left, right, up, and down borders. We'll come back to those on 426, which is pretty cool. Okay, so let's play our level, see what we get. All right. Yay. Oh, wait. No worky. Okay. Welcome to scripting. In order for us to actually physically create the interactivity between all these other elements within the screen, we have to start making relationships through code, okay? Now, I recognize firsthand that a lot of you guys, probably almost all of you guys, aren't coders, okay? And that's fine. I'm going to show you the script. I'm even going to give it to you today so you can walk home with it and use it for your game, for your final project. It's a really simple script, but we need to start making a relationship between a number of different elements, okay? The script, the actual lines of code, are what's going to drive the interactivity of this button. Because by its defaults here, it's just a cool looking texture. But I want it to do something. I want it to change its behavior. And that's where the coding comes in. Computer code is the great common denominator in all video games. I think people often forget that the language of video games is computer code. It's not 3D models, it's not animation, it's not pretty pictures, it's code. It's good, if not critical, to know a little code before you jump into the game world. Even if you're planning on being an artist and that's all you want to do, you have to know some code, okay? Because you're going to be interfacing with people who are programmers. The common language of video games is programming, is code. So we got to know a little bit of it, if only just to be able to speak in the vernacular of this community. And personally, this is something that I've learned from my own experience, it makes you like a triple threat. If you can model, texture, UV, and do all the coding, that you are a valued asset now of that production studio, okay? Let's make our first script. Creating scripts inside of Unity is really, really easy, okay? And we're going to create it through that little pull-down menu found in our project tab. Let's just do it. So we're going to go create, and here we go. These are all the scripts that we can build and create inside of Unity. Of course, the shader and the compute shader stuff, those are actually lines of code, but what they generate are graphical, representations of certain materials and certain surface attributes. JavaScript, C#, and Boostscript are the programming languages that Unity supports firsthand. They're all fantastic. JavaScript is where we're going to hang out. JavaScript is a great programming language to start initially. It's very easy to read. The structure is pretty simple. It's used everywhere in industry. You find a lot of resources online that are entirely done in Java. It's not to say that C# is not a bad language. It's not a bad language at all. It's just a little bit more complicated. I'd say C# is really designed for intermediate kind of level programmers. JavaScript's a great one for us to jump into. So let's create our first JavaScript. Let's give it a name. And we'll call this button play. There we go. All right. Now I'm going to double click on this thing. And there it goes. Let's open it up in MonoDevelop. There are a couple applications that will allow us to very, very quickly generate some lines of code. Now, at the end of the day, code is really nothing more than text, okay? Text with a very, very fancy file extension. We're working with JavaScript, so our extension is .js. But I could use any text editor on the face of the planet to make my lines of code. MonoDevelop is an application that ships with Unity. There's also another one called Unitron, which is very, very good. I don't believe on the PC, I think it's called something else, but on the Mac it's called Unitron. So welcome to writing lines of code. Okay, I'm going to zoom in so we can see a little bit here. Whenever we're writing lines of code, we have to kind of begin to think like a machine. And machines like commands. They also like us to encapsulate these commands into different little chunks so that it can process them in a very defined order of operations. These little chunks, these little groups, if you will, are these functions. And each function is going to define when a certain sequence is going to fire off and occur inside of a cycle of a game. I'm not going to go into too much detail on the role of functions. Once you get to right around week 7, week 8, and 426, we kind of transition into hardcore coding mode, and we'll talk about all of this in detail. But initially, what we want to do is that we want to define some of our own functions. Okay, functions start. If we were to put some commands inside that function, as you'd imagine, these commands would initially be active when the game starts. Function update is also a critically important function inside the larger, parameters, larger environment of our game, as the update function is going to be called every cycle of the game, and that's a lot of cycles. Usually a game runs at right around about 2 to 250 cycles a second. So think of it like the function that's always asking questions. This is where a lot of our like health bar stuff is going to go, right? Because we always want to be evaluating when a certain event happens that damages or that influences our health system. More on that later. However, we're going to write some of our own functions because we want to change the way our little button works. So I'm going to delete these. Function. And for this, since we're working with GUI stuff, we're going to be working with on mouse enter. Ta-da! On mouse enter. Now, whenever we write a function, we have to include some very, very important syntax. Okay? Specifically, we have to have 2 parentheses, and then an open curly brace, and then a closed curly brace. Now, how I write my functions is it's like this. I like having some white space in between my curly braces. I've seen other people do it like this, which is absolutely fine. They'll do it like that. They'll put the curly braces on their own line to make it a little bit easier to read the contents of that function. However you choose to do it is fine, but it needs to follow this very, very strict structure. Now that we're entering into the world of coding, we have to follow the procedures and the sequences and the structures of the coding language to ensure that our scripts activate correctly. All right. Now I brought a little cheat sheet here to help us out. Okay. So the question that we need to ask ourselves is, what in the world do we want to have happen when the mouse rolls in? Okay, here's the cheat sheet. Here's what the final script is going to look like. So function on mouse enter, we want to change, or we want to at least activate the texture component of our GUI texture game object. So really what we're accessing here and what we're striving to influence is that image well on the actual game component itself. Let's check it out. Let's go back over into Unity so you can visualize what's happening here. Okay, so here's my game object. What I want to do is basically change this image. All I'm looking to do, just looking to change the image. I'm trying to flip it, switch it, swap it interactively whenever our mouse cursor hovers into the button. We're using a code library that understands the role of the mouse cursor within our game environment. So this is going to work quite naturally. All right, so I'm just going to copy this. So GUI texture, this is the game object that the script is going to be associated with. Dot, now we're accessing a component of that game object and we're getting the texture component. And we're going to set it to a very, very specific game object, or in this case, a texture. Whenever you see an equal sign, that means set. So we're changing a component into something else. Now, I've created what's called a variable here. Whenever we write code, we want to try to write it generically. And the idea that we can reuse certain parts of this code for a number of different areas, because you might have like 80 different buttons, right? I don't want to write 80 different scripts that hard code in very specific parameters. If I write it generically with the use of variables, then I can interactively swap out those variables at any time and recycle all of these scripts going forward in the future. So I have a couple variables here. I have one for the hover. You can see on mouse exit, we're going to flip my texture back to normal. And then on mouse down is when we actually do something. So let's write our variables first. So we need some variables for normal text and hover text. Let's go back into MonoDevelop. In the world of JavaScript, define every variable with the word var and hover text. And we're going to define that hover text variable as a 2D texture. There we go. Ta-da! Let me make sure I spelled everything correctly. Not 2D texture, texture 2D. This is why I bring my notes. There we go, texture 2D. And I'm just going to copy that line because we need two of them, right? And I'll just change it from hover text to normal text. There we go. Great. Okay. So now let's do it. So it's a Gooey texture dot texture, and we're going to set this bad boy to be hover text. There it is. Now we have just written our very, very first command. Yes, sir. Go ahead. Okay, that's fine. Don't worry about it for now. Then we'll get to it during lab. Okay, so there it is. There's our first command. Okay. Whenever we finish off a command in any line of code, we have to tell the computer that this command is done. It's over, and it needs to go on to the next step. We signify the end of a statement with a semicolon. The computer knows and understands the role of the semicolon, so it's looking for it. So once the computer reads that semicolon, it goes, okay, I'm done, on to the next one. Since we're basically going to be recycling this entire structure, I'm going to copy and paste. This is going to be on mouse exit. So when we move our mouse cursor off of the button, we want it to flip back over into that normal state. So when the cursor enters the button, it's the hover text. It's the hover image. When it exits the button, it's just the normal image, right? Normal text. There we go. All right. Let's save our script. Jump back over into Unity and start messing with it. Now we haven't made a relationship between this script yet and the actual game object. Scripts are game components just like any other game component. It's just like a collider, it's just like a physics object, it's just like the transform. It's a child of a parent. So we need to make a physical relationship between the script and the game object that we want to place it within. So I'm just going to take my little button here, and I'm going to left click and drag it onto the actual game object itself. And that now becomes a child component of that object. Look what's going on here. Check it out. Here's the script, and then down below it, inside the inspector, we've exposed those two variables that I wrote before. By defining them, by data typing them to be texture 2D, the computer understands that this is an image well, and I can interactively drag and drop the textures that I want to go inside of that thing right here in the inspector. This is kind of cool. I love it. I love it. So let's go find my normal image. Oops. So here's normal. There's hover. Let's just put normal in the normal. Awesome. Here is the hover image. We'll put the hover image in that image well. Let's play the game, see what we get. Ta-da! Rock and roll. Awesome. Mission accomplished. Mission accomplished. I love it. Boo, boo, boo. Boo, 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 boo. Awesome. However, it doesn't do anything yet, right? I'm clicking away, and we're not firing off any sort of action. So now's where we've got to start putting our thinking caps on, and we've got to start changing our script to make it work for the goal that we're after. And our goal is to be able to click the button and play our game. Sometimes the easiest way of going through and prototyping your script's functions is to work with the console and to print a whole series of commands to the console just to ensure that you're getting the action that you want before you physically kind of wire everything up. Okay? We're testing it. We want to test it. The last function that we need to write to get an action on the actual button is going to be a new function, and this is going to be, as you would imagine, on mouse down. I just want to make sure it's on mouse down, not click. Yeah, on mouse down. parentheses, open curly brace, close curly brace. Oops. Looks like I accidentally put the return area, the return in the wrong spot earlier and grabbed the previous function's braces. Okay, so now let's do this. Let's write a command. Now I want to test it. I want to do debug. Debug dot. Let's do log. Wrong button, I apologize. Log. And now this needs a couple things here. Inside of its parentheses, you're going to say, yay, it works. Ta-da. So when I click on the button, I should see a little bit of text pop up down here in the console that says, yay, it works. Okay. Let me just triple check to make sure that my syntax is correct. I can't remember if log is capitalized, and it is. Okay, great. Let's save our script, go back over into Unity, and test it. Since we already made a relationship between the script and the game object, any future edits to that script will be automatically applied to that element when we save it instead of mono-develop. Gives us kind of a rapid prototyping environment. Instead of having to reapply it, hitting the save button will overwrite the file that's currently on our guy. Let's try it now. Oops, what's going on? Okay, something got, oh, there it is. Wasn't giving it enough time. Yeah, cool. And then when I clicked on it, you can see down here in what's called the console, we have some text popping up confirming that my little button click is actually driving an action. Ba-da! Awesome. So now we want it to do something, okay? We physically need it to do an action. We've prototyped the script. It's doing exactly and precisely what we wanted to do. Time to wire it all up and have it actually drive an action within the game itself. So I'm going to go back to my script in mono-develop and change what the on-mouse down function is going to be firing off. Because I don't want it to write debug.log. Don't want it to write some text in the console. I want it to fire off an action. And this action is going to be application, oops, caps lock, application.load level. Okay. Now, application.load level is a very, very specific command within inside the Unity code library. And we need to feed it some information. Because we need to feed it. Right now, it doesn't know which level to load. Let's give it some information. We're going to create some parentheses here. Boom. And a semicolon to finish off the command. And we need to place which level we want to load inside of these parentheses. Now, there's two different things that we can load in here. And I'm going to save it, zoom out a little bit, and jump back over into Unity because we need to find some information. And looks like I have done the rookie mistake, and I didn't save my demo level. That's okay, or the level that I was working with earlier. So let me create a new scene here. Save my start menu, and this is going to be, we'll call this one level 1. There we go. And on level 1, let's just put that one in there. Let's also grab the first person character controller, throw that in there. Make sure he is sitting at the origin. I'm also going to turn my character around so we can see out into the room. Awesome. And while we're here, let's just go and add in a directional line. All right. Great. Cool. So now we have level 1 and we have the start menu. So in our script, we need to define which level we want to load. And there's two ways that we can do that. We can actually give it the name of the level, rock and roll, okay? Or we can give it the build number. That build number is defined in your build settings. Let's just go over there because this is kind of important. So let's go to build settings and let's put both the levels that we want to roll in here. So here's start menu and the level 1. The level that's at the top of your build menu is going to define which the initial level the application is going to load. So in every sense, we want to make sure that the scene file that includes our menu system is in that first spot. After that, it really actually doesn't matter which order all the levels appear in following your start menu. But check it out. Each one of our levels gets its own special identifier. That's called the build number. So in our script, when we click on the little button, we can feed it two different things. We can feed it the actual name of the level, or we can feed it that build number. Let's go back into my script real fast, and let's just put it. You're going to load in the first level. All right, let's go back into our game. Go into my start menu here. Hold on a sec. What's going on? Untitled. Start menu. I may have made a mistake. Level 1. Okay, I'm going to delete this one. Cool. Now we're good to go. All right, let's go back into my start menu. Double check to make sure that everything is working on my script. And it looks like it decided it wanted to not save all the lovely hard work I did when defining. Hold on a sec. Okay, well, I'm just having a bad day here. Hold on 2 seconds. I accidentally deleted my the level that included all my Gooey textures. So let's just do it real fast. Let's rebuild my Gooey texture. Put the script in there. Put my normal image in the normal image well. The hover in that one. Awesome. Let's give it a good name. Button, play. All right, and I'm going to save this right now. Save scene. All right, so let's play our game, see what we get. There it is. It's working. It looks like initially, oops, on my button game object, it's grabbing the wrong image. Let's also go into the height and width. Dial this in. It's 300 by 100. Awesome. Better. Let's try it again. It's working. And then when I click in play, boom, it loads the right level. Mission accomplished. So as a just small little recap, I have a Gooey texture game object that has a script associated with it. And inside that script, if we look at its specific details, there we go. These three functions, these three functions define the action that I want my game to perform. We're swapping the textures when our mouse is entering and exiting the game object itself. And then when we click on it, it's loading the level. So what if you look at the way the button is currently working, check it out. If you look at the way the button's currently working, okay, awesome. When we click on the button, boom, launches the game. Awesome. But what if we wanted to have a secondary button that gave the player the option to quit the game? Let's look at this. It's pretty cool. It's pretty easy. I think you're going to find that it's almost the exact same structure. Let's go back over into Photoshop real fast. And I'm going to save, instead of having multiple project files here, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to initialize my type tool forever. Let's go into my normal button. I'm just going to save out a new one. This one's going to be quit. Awesome. Rock and roll. Let's save all these guys out. Save as PNGs. So this is now going to be button quit. Quit, and this is the click. This is hover, save as. And this is going to be the normal state. So same exact process. We'll do this thing for all of your buttons. All right. Now that we have all of our assets from Photoshop, we can jump back over into Unity and start wiring it up. So first things first, let's import all those assets in. Not in that dialog box. If you were to use the Finder and just like left click and drag, yeah, absolutely, same time. All right, so let's go ahead and add the game object. I'm going to select my normal button, game object, create other, Gooey Texture, and there it is. So let's change some things. First, the height and width. Let's put that to 300 by 100, and I'm going to do a little pixel inset on the Y, just to get it down below the play. Awesome. Now, because we wrote our script generically, we can actually reuse this script. We don't have to create a whole new one. So I'm going to grab this one, and I'm just going to put it onto the quit button. Awesome. And now I'm going to, oops, excuse me, I apologize. I accidentally clicked off. I'm going to load in all the buttons into their corresponding image wells in the inspector. So here's the quit normal button. Boom. Here is the hover one. Boom. Let's see if it works. Now, I just realized that we can't recycle this one because the command's different. But that's okay. Works there, except I don't want my quit button to load the game. So we have to make a copy. We can't use this script for the quit button. We have to make a duplicate of it. So let's just copy and paste it. Or shoot, I'll just create a new one. Create a new JavaScript. This will be button quit. And it's going to be identical to the other guy, except for one small change. So here's the original script that we were working on. I'm just going to copy and paste it into my quit button. The only thing that's going to be different is this function on mouse down. It's the only thing that we need to change. We're still going to use the initial application command, but we don't want it to load a level. We want it to do what? Quit. Oops, looks like I forgot to upcase. Here we go, application.quit. Let's save it and make the connection over in Unity. So I don't need this on my quit button. I don't want the button play script. So let's just delete it. Remove component, there it is. And now I'll put button quit on there. Associate the images with their corresponding variables. Excuse me. There we go. Here's the hover. Let's play it now, see what we get. So the play button, it does that, No worky. Although it is working, let me show you why. The game is actually firing off the command, but the command that we're asking it to fire off isn't actually available to us in Unity itself, because we haven't actually built an application yet, right? We're just previewing the application. So there's nothing for it to terminate. Let's build the actual game and see if the button works. Let's build it. Build settings. All this is lovely. Just be a Mac PC standalone. Let's build it. And we'll just call it test right on my desktop. Here we go. Here's the application. Coming up, here's my level. Awesome, my buttons work. This is great. And then if I hit the quit button, it closes the app down. Pretty neat, huh? Pretty neat. Now, one thing that you can do inside of this scene file is put anything you want in here. It really is a live environment for you to continue to play with. I have some buttons here. Let me see if I can just kind of line everything up here. It's driving me crazy that they're out of order. Okay, and just to kind of prove to you that this is a real live three-dimensional scene, you can put a plane in there. Okay, you can put lights in here. You can do whatever you want in here. You can make it as cool or as empty and as barren as you want. I think ideally the direction that I would encourage you to go in is one that illustrates, or kind of continues the theme of your game. Okay, cool. So it's a live environment. This scene file. Yeah.
How would you make it so, like you want to hit escape while playing the game?
That is actually not an easy thing to do. Yeah, it's that actually takes a lot of work. So we're going to save that for 426. Because in that one key press, we have to pause the game, pause all the actions that are happening. We have to pause the cycles of the game. We have to bring open a couple other menu systems. The exact. I mean, it is not an easy thing to do.
Would you just make like the pause menu stay like default and the playing game like a do while loop?
Could? Yeah, absolutely. But that structure is not easy to establish in 10 or 15 minutes. Takes some experience. We'll get there in 426, so absolutely.
How would you kind of put a backdrop image behind the button?
So behind the buttons, a couple ways you can do it. Think about it. Backdrop image, nothing more than just an image that's texture mapped onto a plane. Just align it. You got it. You got it. Yeah, video game menus are all smoke and mirrors. Often they are just images texture mapped to planes. That's all they really are. Other questions? Everyone good? Kind of understand it? I want to give you that script in a text file so that you can start incorporating these into your final designs. I think for your game, you're going to want to have a menu system so that when you jump in, boom, give the player the option to quit your game before they commit to actually playing it. Questions? Yeah.
Once we built the game, in order to quit it, like once you've already played, you just close the external.
That's the best way to do it at the moment. Yep. Yeah, just a straight up on the Apple Command Q, quit the game. You're out of there. At this stage, 426, we'll do the whole escape key menu thing. That's something that we'll explore because those are really, really important ideas, and they talk a lot. They talk about some really high-level concepts on the programming side to make all those things function and work together in harmony. Yeah, in 426, you're going to find very quickly that you are going to be creating little machines, very intricate machines. And each machine is going to be defined by its own series of components and scripts and moving parts. Hopefully, if we design our machines correctly, they'll talk to one another without too many issues. Questions, questions, questions. Everyone good? Everyone kind of understand it? Not too bad, huh? We're going to keep it real simple. This is our first kind of foray into scripting. Yeah?
I was just wondering that, would the whole game just be completely silent all the time if there were that ambiance music?
Absolutely, there certainly is. I'll let you explore that on your own. That stuff you can easily find inside the Unity forums and about a dozen different places online.
Okay.
Yep. As a reminder, going forward, you'll definitely want to make sure that you leverage the power of Unity 3D Student over the summer. I think it's a good idea that you spend your summer months, continuing to learn a little bit of programming. Unity 3D Student's a great one. The Learn site on unity3d.com is phenomenal. Okay, all the scripting stuff on that website should be memorized, in my opinion. Okay, they're just really phenomenal learning resources. I love them. One other place that's doing a really great job at doing programming and instruction is Code Academy. Do you guys know Code Academy at all? Yeah, Code Academy, it's cool. They're trying really, really hard to be the one-stop shop for learning how to write programming code online. And they have a really fantastic service. I can't recommend them enough. It's all free. I think there are some paid resources on the website, but go check it out. It's wonderful. It really is. If this is something that you really are interested in and you want to participate in the programming side, you got to start. Code Academy is a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful first step. Questions, comments? Everyone good? Everyone understand it? I'll blast that text file to all your local machines in here so you have access to it over the next couple weeks. All right. Well, if there are any questions, I think we'll just continue to work on our final projects for the rest of class today. The clock is ticking. We now have 2 weeks to finish this bad boy. I want to walk around, check in with everyone, make sure that we're all on the right track, and that we're working towards something that is doable in the next 2 weeks. Are there any questions before we go into Open Lab? All right, let's hit it.